So here's a thought that people much smarter than me have probably had at some point in the past. We, the human species, and the entirety of the ecosystem are actually von Neumann machines. The only person I actually was able to find who espoused this notion in some fashion was David Brin, but depending on how you read his story, it's really not the same thing. The most common interpretation of the story is that it's really not the same thing. Quick disclaimer, what I will be describing in this video are not actually von Neumann machines in the traditional way, because those are always perfectly self-replicating, super efficient nano machines. I just wanted an excuse to give this video a cool name, to be honest. You probably have at some point in your life heard about Panspermia, and if you haven't, it's not a sex thing. It might be a sex thing when it comes to furries, but it's not a sex thing when I talk about it. And if you don't know what it is, if you can't be bothered to look up Wikipedia right now, I will explain it to you. There's a lot of organisms, especially the very small ones, the microorganisms, that are ridiculously resilient. You can literally put them in space for billions of years, exposed to all the shit that kills life up there, and they will survive in some form. They won't be active during that time, but you can just freeze them, and then they'll come back. The comet they're on will hit some planet with the right conditions, and boom! A biogenesis has occurred for that planet. This is a very common theory on how life on Earth may have gotten started. I'm very partial to it myself, and if you look up what tardigrades are, you will know why, because those little fuckers are tough. They are tough. There's also the very popular notion that instead of going through the massive effort of building a huge colony ship and filling it up with people with the right genetic makeup, the right genetic diversity, the proper intelligence, the proper qualifications, and send it on a thousands and hundreds of thousands of years journey through space, we might just build little footballs full of nano machines which we then just go ahead and kick into space. And that would be much simpler. You could probably send out like 1,000 of these in an afternoon, like one of those little tennis ball shooting machines. When they eventually arrive in another star system, they find a suitable planet or other body in space, then start consuming that body's resources, out of which they then build more nanites, which then consume more resources and build more nanites, and then eventually they end up completing some project. It might be to strip mine the whole planet and make deposits that you can eventually pick up or send them back to Earth, or whatever planet you sent these out from. It might be to terraform it. It might be to put just the native ecosystem there as a complete just carbon copy. It might be to make huge giant space penises, right? The possibilities are endless, and eventually they will use some of the resources, because very little are required really, to build a tennis ball shooting machine of their own and shoot out the nanite footballs into even other star systems, and then so on and so forth. And that's how you colonize the universe. So why not marry these two ideas, right? Set them up for a blind date, nice Italian place, violinists maybe, nice bottle of Chianti, then later, when she asks him up for coffee, put on some rose petals, put on some Bob Marley, see what happens. What I'm saying is that the very first life forms that arrived on this planet, these single-celled organisms from which all life sprang, from the comets, were actually put there by alien species, right? They were randomly sent out into the universe to maybe find a planet where life could happen. Think about it, right? They're very simple, they are self-replicating, they can reprogram themselves, process resources into different resources, right? They can use photosynthesis and eventually photosynthesizing organisms, which are basically the thing that feeds the entire global ecosystem. Eventually those become oil, even transferring themselves into an entirely different state of energy, right? Which can then be used later for when the machines get increasingly complex and more complex and more complex and more complex, and maybe intelligence arises. Or maybe something else entirely that we don't understand. Really, all life on Earth, including us, is just complex structures powered by countless and countless of nanomachines, right? Nanomachines aren't like these small metal balls that do magic shit like you see in movies. They're chemical machines. They function with the mechanics of that very small plane of the molecular level, but they are essentially just traditional machines with levers and all that shit. And cells are just a very complex version of that. Think about a single human cell how ridiculously complex that is, right? All the proteins and the enzymes that do all the DNA is a perfect data storage device for a self-learning system, right? It's flawed, of course, but it's also very, very simple and very, very effective. All of that is nanomachines. If you look at the cell membrane, if you didn't know that that was part of a cell, you would just assume that some smart scientist devised it. But no, that's just a thing that happened through evolution. For those of you who don't know, cell walls are made of these flagella-looking proteins that have hydrophilic heads and lipophilic tails. Because water and oil don't mix, they automatically arrange themselves in this particular fashion, creating a layer of fatty molecules through which water on both sides of the membrane cannot pass, except through special pump and carry proteins and all that, which means that you can control what goes in and out of a cell. Please don't put that as the answer on your biology test. It's really quite oversimplified. So don't do it. And eventually life on Earth is just going to send out its own life somewhere into the cosmos. It might have happened already without humanity ever lifting a finger, and that's how you get the thing where the nanomachines consume some of the resources to create more of themselves and send them out into different star systems. Right, this is the very same thing. But hold up, you might say. Why not just go the traditional route and send the nanomachines? That would be so much more efficient. They're a bit more complex, they can still survive space, what's the fucking deal? And really, that is 100% correct. You would be much more efficient if you did it that way, right? You could just send that shit out and I think process like half the mass of the universe in 500,000 years or some ridiculous shit like that. There's this obsession with speed and efficiency in science and engineering, and it's really quite understandable because an efficient machine costs a lot less to maintain than an inefficient one. Also, when it comes to scientific advances and all that, humans are a fairly short-lived species, so we want to see the great stuff that happens, right? Yet nature, which the ecosystem of Earth, which is the most complex and wonderful machine of them all, is incredibly inefficient. And quite frustratingly so. We tend to assume that advanced civilizations will have this same obsession with efficiency that we do, but really I don't think that's true. Because if you're a post-biological civilization, like one that possibly has achieved complete immortality, right? Unlimited resources for personal use for every single individual, I think that the conference of the people who choose to send out the probes to put life in the rest of the universe, it might just go a little differently than how it would go today on Earth if we had such a conference. Right, you have the one science guy who says, look, I've developed this ball, and if we shoot it into the next star system, we will essentially be able to make every single planet on there a carbon copy of our planet. No problem. 50 years even. I'll just break the laws of physics. Fuck it. And someone else stands up and goes, and here's my suggestion. How about we chill the fuck out? How's that for an idea? How about we don't plaster the universe with parking lots that are exactly similar to the parking lot that is our home world, and instead take our time to be entertained by literally billions upon billions of years of almost unpredictable evolution, creating wonderful patterns and fascinating creatures and interesting phenomena. I mean, these people are immortal, right? So what's the rush? In an immortal society, I could imagine that one of the most valued commodities would be novel experiences, right? To stave off the boredom that is eternity, basically. So really, sending out much simpler probes that rely on the laws of evolution instead of programming gives you shit like fucking dinosaurs and mammoths and the Italian Renaissance and Mad Men and Pornhub and the expanding brain meme. All of this is generated by these extremely simple nanomachine cells that you just farted out into the universe at some point in time. Right? The video games industry has been chasing the specter of emergent gameplay, right? Games that just continue building themselves and never get boring without requiring any creative input. They've chased this for years. They've tried to make this happen for pretty much as long as there's video games, right? Procedural generation. You take some seed of numbers, put them in a system that has predefined rules, and then that system does different things to different strings of numbers. This literally isn't just a passing fad, this is the holy grail, or at least one of the holy grails of the games industry. I should say game development, because the only holy grail of the games industry, as it stands, is money. Plonking down a single-celled organism somewhere in the universe and then watching what happens as the laws of evolution do their thing to it is literally the same thing as procedural generation. The future isn't all about science and engineering. Science and engineering is a key component in it, but art and culture is just as important to the daily experience of people. Right, there's still, today, there is blacksmiths, even though we have developed much better ways of working metal. There are still blacksmiths. When we come to the point where we're able to just print out veggies in like 3D printers, there will still be people who do gardening the traditional way just because as a hobby, because why not? What makes you assume that some alien civilization wouldn't at least be similar? Though, to be fair, it would be hilarious if, as I was uploading this video, and when I pressed the publish button, some alien galactic federation would land on the UN building. They'd just go, oh yeah, by the way, life happens when Morgan Freeman speaks. That's how it happens. His voice is like a magical gift that happens every couple million years on different planets, which is also why we're gonna have to take him with us, so we can read My Little Pony fanfiction on some icy rocks and other star systems. So yeah, that was just an idea I had floating around my head for a while. This, by the way, is also a type of video that I do on my channel, if you're confused, because I talk not only about politics and RPGs, but everything that interests me, and well, politics and RPGs aren't the only things that interest me. Also, thank you so much to literally everyone who has subscribed. Holy shit, the number just keeps on climbing. This is a wild ride. Really, thank you so much for this. Next week I'll be packing like a little Christmas present for all my YouTube mates and everyone who's helped me out on my way so far. Holy shit, just thank you very much to just every single one of you. Until then, check out my audiobooks, subscribe, like the video, have a flame war in the comments, follow me on Twitter, and see you around, cunts.